In this video, I'm going to be talking about how it would be possible and how it would make sense in the Madoka Magica series for Junko Kaname to pretty much know everything that was going on with Madoka. There are multiple scenes where Madoka and Homura talk privately, sometimes in Madoka's own home. If Junko happened to overhear a crucial conversation, especially one where they explicitly mention Kyubey, witches, or the truth about soul gems, she might start piecing things together rather quickly. So a realistic example of a scene would be something like Madoka and Homura talking in Madoka's room about magical girls, and Junko, passing by the door, hears something cryptic like, "If you contract with Kyubey, you'll regret it forever." In fact, this technically even happens in one of the time loops where we see Madoka on the computer turning around to see Homura grabbing Kyubey and literally saying, don't make a wish or don't interact with Kyubey. Imagine Madoka's mother walking past the room and actually overhearing this. Maybe Madoka's mother actually was there listening. We don't actually know. We don't have very much context for what happened in this timeline. Maybe this is the timeline where Madoka's mom may have actually learned something about the magical girl system. In fact, we know that different things that happen in past timelines end up carrying over to future timelines, like Madoka's karmic destiny that would lead her into becoming a magical girl. Same thing can be said for Sayaka's karmic destiny, because in the first timeline, Sayaka doesn't become a magical girl, but her karmic destiny obviously increases later on. That's why we see her become a magical girl in subsequent timelines later. So there is a possibility that maybe Madoka's mother was listening in, and this could also be part of her growing karmic destiny of starting to understand the magical girl system. Maybe this is why she was aware that something was wrong with Madoka, or that her intuition was speaking to her, letting her know that there was more going on to Madoka than meets the eye. There's also the situation of Sayaka Miki going missing and Madoka actually going to Homura's house, and they both talk about it. Madoka's mother was worried about Madoka after it was reported that Sayaka had died, so much so that I could totally see Madoka's mother following Madoka to Homura's house and maybe overhearing a conversation between Madoka and Homura about the fact that Sayaka died and why Sayaka died. So these are actually two very realistic ways for Madoka's mother to actually figure out the whole situation about magical girls. So imagine a situation of if Junko Kaname were unlucky enough to be near Madoka during a potential witch attack, and this could create a moment of horror and shock where she is forced to accept the supernatural forces that exist of witches and magical girls. Imagine Junko is walking home from work when she suddenly finds herself in a warped version of the city, people acting mindless. Then she sees Homura, maybe Madoka's with her, and Homura is in her magical girl outfit and trying to fight off familiars and witches, and Madoka's kind of just, watching her. And instead of forgetting about having witnessed Homura vanquishing the witch or the familiars and Madoka being with her, like most of those probably would, Junko's strong will and intelligence allows her to remember the events that were shown, and this could be some realistic ways that she could know about what Madoka's doing. I could imagine Junko might start doing what a good parent would do, which is ask questions. She probably would be like, "Madoka, I need you to tell me the truth. What's going on? You've been sneaking out at night, and every time you do, something bad always happens in the city." Madoka, being Madoka, would probably crack under pressure. I could just imagine Madoka having a hard time lying to her mother if her mother was like being really direct with her. I mean, she technically doesn't tell her mother the full story at the end of the series, but that's because Madoka at this point has gotten a resolve. But during the earlier parts of the series, Madoka is still emotionally fragile and weak. She hasn't figured out her purpose in this whole grand scheme of crazy magical girl stuff yet. So yeah, if her mother was direct with her, I could see Madoka cracking very easily. And I could just see Madoka on the verge of tears, wanting to confide in somebody all this time and finally being given the space to be able to do that. And then I could just see Madoka being like, I don't want to see anyone else die. And then Madoka's mom would be like, die? At this point, Junko might not know the full truth, but she would know something unnatural is going on for sure. Now, Kyubey, as we know, is a troll. He has absolutely no understanding of human emotions, but he does know how to manipulate people. If he thought Juko was a potential emotional energy source, he might approach her just to see if she's eligible, or maybe even use her in some way to manipulate Madoka into making a contract. And I could just see Madoka's mom not having any part of it, like instantly hating this little creature thing that wants to make her daughter a magical girl. I could imagine Juko being very skeptical by Kyubey. Juko would probably spit in Kyubey's general direction after laughing, and she'd be like, "What? You're telling me you go around tricking little girls into this shit?" I don't know. I can just imagine this being a fun conversation. It has to be when Juko is drunk, though. If she's not drunk, it doesn't work. I just think it'd be so funny. But yeah, Juko is now aware of Kyubey's existence, and his entire business model of crap. Probably wouldn't be able to do much about how he does things, since he's like this indestructible marshmallow thing. But she'd at least know something supernatural is going on, and she probably would say, "If you come close to my daughter, I'm gonna skin you alive, you little freak." I think another thing that would be kind of interesting is how Homura and Madoka's mom would interact. So imagine Homura approaching Junko Kaname, maybe as a last resort. Because I feel like Homura is very secretive, maybe more than she needs to be. Like, Homura never tells adults anything because I think she believes that they just wouldn't understand, that it would be a waste of time. Very similar to how in later timelines, she doesn't even bother explaining things to the other girls because she knows from previous timelines that every time she tries to tell them stuff, nothing changes, so she basically gives up at a certain point. However, if something went really wrong, let's say if Madoka is on the verge of contracting and Homura can't stop her, I can see some timeline where Homura might go to Juko as a last resort. She could frame it in a way that doesn't overwhelm Juko with too much supernatural information at once. Like, I can imagine the conversation going like this: "Your daughter is in danger. There's an entity manipulating her into making a decision that will ruin her life." And then Juko would probably be, "Oh, are you talking about the little marshmallow thing that I met?" And Homura would probably say, "Yeah, that little marshmallow thing. I can't explain everything, but you have to trust your instincts when you have that feeling of wanting to skin it alive. Trust yourself and help me to not let Madoka become a magical girl." You know, it's funny, if Homura had actually told Madoka's mom, like, realistically what was going on with this whole magical girl thing, this literally could have been the thing that stopped Madoka from making a contract. Because imagine, Madoka's mom has so much authority over Madoka in the series. Like, Madoka idolizes her mother and listens to basically everything that her mother says at the beginning, you know, like everything from what to wear. You know, the decision to throw the soul gem on the truck was essentially influenced by her mother. If Homura had just told Madoka's mom about Kyubey, Madoka's mom would have did all the work for her, and Madoka would have never made a freaking contract. Madoka's mom could have been like, "I'm gonna ground you if you try to do anything crazy like that." What do you think about this theory? Do any of these, anything I mentioned make sense to you? And do you have your own idea of how it could realistically work for Junko Kaname to become aware? Let me know in the comments below. Love you. Bye-bye.